Hello, everybody. This is Jim Feist in Las Vegas, and it's Monday morning. We're coming out of the wild card weekend, and we're going to the divisional rounds now. And pretty exciting. I got Hank Goldberg on the phone. Hank was 3-1 on the weekend. We've got 4 games coming up this week. We'll pick up a couple of them. We got some college basketball coming up this week. Not tonight, though. There's no college basketball on the horizon. And of course, tonight there is a little game down in Georgia, and it's called the championship game of college football, and it's Alabama versus Georgia. Hank, good morning.
Woof, woof, woof.
Yeah, you're right. Lots of barking.
All the dogs. When was the last time 4 dogs covered on any weekend in the playoffs? I think it happened a few years ago.
It did, and last year it was all favorites.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can look at it one year to the next. It's all about the teams and the coaches, and yeah, we had 4 dogs barking, and we almost had 4 unders. We had one game go over out of the 4 games.
Yeah, I had the over. I gave that out, by the way, in the New Orleans game, and I had the under. I thought the under in the Buffalo game was a lead pipe cinch. So I went 4-0 yesterday, and I lost a lot of money on Kansas City, but I came back strong with the. But I lost the total on the second game on the Rams game. I thought the Rams game coached like a rookie in that game. I'll tell you something. The Atlanta coach is a defensive guy. He had playoff experience, and he just went out to make sure that Gurley didn't hurt him. And they just jammed up the box and made sure that Gurley didn't hurt him too badly. And he had a couple of decent runs, but outside of that, I thought that I was kind of shocked that the Rams coach panicked the way he did. The other thing was I couldn't understand why he let that guy continue to run back kicks after he dropped 4 kicks, and the turnovers by the Rams was what killed him in that game, and set up a couple of scores by Atlanta, which had the usual problems, but they ran the ball all over that defense that had been playing pretty good going into yesterday, or Saturday rather. But defensively, they were getting it done for much of the game, but except for the fact that they were on the field so much that they just got worn down, and in the second half. They didn't see the ball, but that was a question of that of the Atlanta defense really doing a number on Gurley and not allowing him to hurt him, instead of wanting the passing game to beat him. Well, the passing game would have beaten him if they'd have held on to the ball, but they had more drops and tip passes that really killed him. And I didn't think that Goff played badly at all. I thought Goff played well. As a matter of fact, none of that was his fault. I thought that it was basically a question of them, kind of giving up on the run a little bit. And I thought the coach kind of panicked. But I'll tell you something. I've never seen a worse job on special teams than the Rams committed in that game, and their special teams had been good going into that game.
Well, they say everything changes when you go in the playoffs, and it certainly did. I'd like to bring up the situation with Kansas City and Andy Reid. Andy Reid was, I know you, Hank, you go back a long way with Andy in football, and he was in Philadelphia. He had a lot of talent there, and he's had a lot of talent in Kansas City. They've won the AFC West, I think, 3 years now. You got Alex Smith has had a good statistical year again. They do well in the regular season, and get to the playoffs, and something happens. I mean, you can't argue with this record. I mean, I lost money on them too. It was a mistake. I don't know if it was a mistake, but it happens. Seems like it happens all the time with them. 18-point lead, they blew it.
2 years in a row.
I know. Yeah.
18-point lead 2 years in a row.
Is it
That's
time,
never happened.
Is it time for Kansas City to move on from Andy Reid?
Well, he gets them to the playoffs, and he did give up the offensive signal calling to Nagy, and they got into the second half. They didn't see the ball very much. I mean, in the third quarter, they couldn't stop the Tennessee running game. They had no answers on defense. Tennessee had the ball. They had a 9-minute drive in the opening of the second half, and you don't expect their defense to cave in like that. Their defense had played very well in the first half. Tennessee couldn't do that much, but I knew that that running back Henry was coming off a great game a week before. What I didn't expect was to see Mariota run for all those yards. They didn't seem to have an answer for him on third down. He was killing him with his legs. And Mariota, when he's healthy and he can use his legs, he's a threat. And I couldn't understand why they didn't have somebody watching him to run the ball, because he kept killing them play after play on third downs. All those third down conversions were him.
Well, Kansas City came into the game, and one of the weaknesses they had was stopping the run, and it showed up. Henry and Mariota just absolutely controlled that game. And the thing is, though, that may be so for the defensive side of the ball. Okay, but their offense had an 18-point lead coming into the second half. They didn't score. I mean, they got shut out.
Well, they did. Well, how many possessions did they have in the third quarter? I think they ran 4 plays or something like that in the third quarter.
Well, that's their own.
That's number one. Number two was, remember what Mariota's weaknesses have been on the road, and that was turnovers. And he didn't turn the ball over because he wasn't throwing the ball on third down. He was running the ball on third down.
Well, my point is, when Kansas City did get the ball, it was 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. You got to be able to hold the ball. You got to be able to control the ball and create your own first downs, and they didn't do that on offense. And Tennessee
gave up on the run.
And
They never ran the ball.
Tennessee's defense is not that good, and they did. Tennessee played one of the weakest schedules in football. As a matter of fact, I think it's 31 out of the 32 teams. They had the second to last weakest strength of schedule. So, I mean, there's no excuse for that. And I think Andy Reid is done, and he should be gone. That's my opinion.
Well, he's not going to be gone. I think that what happened in that game was just was ridiculous in that you got the leading running back in the league, and he carries the ball 5 times in the second half. That was absurd.
It's all about
when you got a 3-score lead.
It's all about coaching. It's all about coaching. It's got to come down to the coach. The players have to listen to the coach. The players have to follow the directions. It's all about coaching, and that's just my opinion.
Well, I tell you, you're leaving out one key element, and that is that their game plan going into the game all centered around the tight end. And when Kelsey got hurt, remember he had caught 4 passes early in the game, all of which were key to their scoring early in the game. And when he got hurt and had to go out of the game, they had to totally revamp what they were going to do offensively. And when he got hurt, I thought to myself, this is not good. If he stays in the game, we're not having this conversation.
I totally agree with you on that. I do think that that was a major. I mean, definitely, you lose a player like that, especially when it takes away.
Because Tennessee had no answer for him, none whatsoever. He was killing them. That to me had the same effect on that team that Gronk would have going out of the New England game. That guy is a beast, and he was the key to their offense.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So we lose. The Rams are out. The Chiefs are out. Now we go to the other games that we actually got. The favorites actually moved on, and that was Jacksonville and New Orleans. They didn't cover the spreads, but they did win. So the Sunday games, at least the favorites did win the games and move on to this week. But you were.
That New Orleans game was interesting because I nailed that game because I thought that Carolina's defense would hold up against them. What they didn't hold up against was Drew Brees, who had a phenomenal game. He was so on the money with his passes. I don't think he threw a bad ball the whole game, and they needed him because Carolina stopped their running game cold. And Carolina, and by the way, they suspended one of their top defensive backs, or defensive linebackers rather. But I'll tell you something about Carolina. They gave it their best shot, and they just came up short. But they stayed in the game, and they had a chance to win it at the end. They got shafted. It was an interesting finish in that their defense held up at the end, and Cam made the big play to McCaffrey that got them within scoring distance. They stopped New Orleans cold on a 3-and-out situation, forced them to got the interception they needed, except that the guy would have been better off if they had just batted the ball down. And in fact, they got a bad call in that he actually did not have control of the ball, and they should have had the ball 20 yards further downfield. Instead of having the ball at the 30, they should have had it at midfield. Might have made a difference because they moved the ball down the field quickly and were in position to score when Cam got the sack that ended the game. Could have been a different result.
There's no question that that play that, of course, when they went for it on 4th and 2 at the 50-yard line, it was a very questionable decision. They did it. They got away with it. They won the game anyway, but it was very questionable. It's all over the Twitter universe right now today. Everybody's discussing it. But be that as it may, it sets up. We got some interesting games this coming weekend. I don't think we're going to cover them all today because we're just recapping last week. Jacksonville won their game, Hank, and I know you have very strong feelings that the Buffalo coach screwed that up quite a bit for them.
Well, when you have the ball 1st and goal, where as little as the scoring opportunities present themselves, 1st and goal on the 1-yard line, and you throw a pass on 1st down, and they got an offensive interference call, which suddenly put them back 10 yards. I think it cost them the game. All you have to do is run the ball, and you're going to score. And cost them 7 points instead of them having to settle for 3. 7-0 would have been a lot different going in. And then somehow he made another mistake, which put the other side in position to kick a field goal because they did not defend against Bortles running the ball. They should have put a spy on Bortles because Bortles passing, it was like he did not throw a good pass the entire game. He was throwing more passes to the sideline than he was that were out of bounds than inbounds. He was like, somebody put it very well today on one of the shows I saw. It said it reminded him of the second baseman for the Yankees. I think it was for the Yankees, who couldn't throw to first base. You remember that? And he was wild. And so all they had to do was guard against him running the ball. And for some reason they didn't. And they should never have gotten that field goal that tied the game at the half. That was the worst coaching job I've seen. Buffalo was the better team. And you know something? They had the running back. McCoy played. And he got off some big runs. 2 big runs were called back on penalties. So they were sloppy. They had penalties that were needless penalties that were, back, illegal block in the back. They had a 39-yard run or something like that that was called back. They made the mistakes that were, just unnecessary mistakes, and they should have won that game. And now they're home, and the wrong team is moving ahead. That that Jacksonville team to me is, the Fournette is shot. They had no running game against Buffalo's defense, and Bortles is horrible right now. He just is now 3 games in a row that he's played poorly. He had 5 interceptions coming into the game. The only reason he didn't have any interceptions in this game was because he wasn't throwing the ball on the field of play.
Yeah, he's a very inconsistent quarterback, and
he's consistent now. He's garbage.
He's consistently bad. That's right. They're going to. We're not going to talk about too much coming up. I'll give you the opening lines on these games. Now that we've covered, Atlanta's a 2.5 3-point favorite on the road at Philly, and that line, by the way, is simply. It's a 7 or 8 point adjustment over what it would have been if Wentz was the quarterback. And that's big, but it's not as big as the Aaron Rodgers to Hundley adjustment. But it's still a big, Foles has looked pretty bad the last couple of weeks, and the odds makers know that the people have seen that, and they made the adjustments coming out of the box. And so you're looking at 2.5 and 3 in that game, and now I'm starting to see more 3s than 2.5. So it's getting pretty solid. The Tennessee-New England game, it's pretty consistent at 13 or 13.5. Actually, there's a 14 out there, too. So there's more 13.5s and 14s than 13s. Pittsburgh opened 7. We're looking at 7.5 or 8 at the moment. And it's bouncing back. There are some people coming in and taking the 7.5s on Jacksonville. And it's a little bit surprising based on what we saw yesterday. Minnesota is open 3.5. It's up to 3.5. What's mostly 4, but there are still some 3.5s out there. The totals, for the most part, have been bet down. The biggest move has been in the Atlanta-Philadelphia game. The odds makers opened that game 44 or 44.5, and it's down to 41 or 41.5. I guess they don't feel. Well, see, Atlanta has played some good defense lately, Hank. And, they did hold down the Rams. Granted, there were drop passes and stuff. But be that as it may, the Rams were the highest scoring team in football, and they held them to 13 points. So I think the people are seeing that Atlanta going up against Philadelphia with Foles, they've knocked that total down 3.5, 4 points in just a couple of hours. So that's the biggest move we've seen is on that total.
Well, Atlanta's traveling back and forth across country. They played off a short week, and it didn't bother them too much. They got their 2 running backs healthy. Alex Mack makes a big difference playing center. He was questionable all week, and he played a great game. He was a key blocker on a lot of those runs that Atlanta made. Now they're going up against the Philadelphia team that we'll see what the weather is going to be like. That could be a factor in that game. But we'll see. I was surprised that they were. I thought the game would be a pick'em. But the country's in love with Atlanta right now. As far as Pittsburgh, I heard a guy on the NFL channel this morning say that he thought that Jacksonville was his best, would be the team to watch as a dog. Bringing to mind, the 5 picks that Fatface threw against them the first time they played. I got to tell you something. Pittsburgh's going to remember that. There's no way they played down to this team. Jacksonville right now is the worst team left in this playoffs. And I think going into Pittsburgh with the week off, if their star wide receiver has time to get well, I think Jacksonville gets their doors blown off this week. And I shouldn't be giving away a pick, but when the game opened 7, I jumped on it. That number's, I think, going to go up. I can't see Jacksonville third week out of 4 on the road, and they have not played well now for a month.
Well, I go along with everything you just said about that matchup. The biggest problem I have with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's been this way ever since Mike Tomlin's been the coach, they play down to their competition, and that bothers the hell out of me. Anytime they're laying big numbers, and this is a big number, you're going to be laying.
That's very true, but this is a revenge game. Besides everything else, they looked horrible the first time they played him, and Fournette ran all over them, and they got destroyed earlier in the season. But a lot has changed since week 5, and believe me, Pittsburgh is not going to be looking ahead. They're going to be looking past. They're going to be reminded of what happened the first time they played. And they're going to be out for blood.
Well, you're probably right. Hank, your plays are up on JimFeist.com right now. And we do, there's no college basketball today, but Hank has been doing extremely well in college hoops. We are getting down to the end of the NFL
By the
season.
way, horses, I had a big day on horses given out. I picked up all the winners at Gulfstream in the stakes races, and I had a nice $12 exacta for $1 in the big race at Gulfstream. Bob Baffert has another good 3-year-old, and he won pretty easily. He took blinkers off him, and he won easily on Saturday. This is a horse to watch as the 3-year-old season got underway, and then with the sham stakes at Santa Anita. So we hit that exacta cold because the other horse we like scratched in the race. So, and it came back $12.20. So our horses on Saturday did very well for you.
What's that horse's name that you're talking about?
I can't remember the name. It's a Baffert training. But he won pretty easily. I'll let you know next time he runs.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We do have a championship game tonight. Hank and I. Well, I know I have a play on it. Hank, do you have a play on it tonight that will be up online?
Yes, I do. I'm not giving it away though. But I tell you this.
Neither am I.
This is. I talked to a guy who I help out who runs one of Donald Trump's hotels, and Trump is probably going to be interviewed on the telecast. And I said, text your boss and just tell him that it was a woof woof weekend.
All right, Hank. You take care. We'll talk to you again on Wednesday. Thanks, buddy.
Okay.